My son messed with the school buses. I've never been prouder. The notification on my phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I knew before I even looked at it that my world was about to change. It was from my 12-year-old son Marcus, sent from his school-issued iPad. "Mom, can you pick me up today? Please don't ask why on the bus." I was elbow-deep in quarterly reports at my desk when that message came through, but something about the way he phrased it, so careful, so specific, made my stomach drop. Marcus doesn't ask for rides home. Ever. The kid who creates detailed spreadsheets of his weekly routine and color-codes his homework assignments doesn't just deviate from the plan without a reason. 20 minutes later, I was idling in the Riverside Elementary pickup lane, watching other parents scroll through their phones while their kids bounced toward their cars with backpacks dragging behind them. When Marcus finally emerged, I could tell immediately that something was wrong. His shoulders were hunched forward, his dinosaur backpack was covered in what looked like chocolate milk stains, and there was an angry red scratch running down his left cheek. "Hey, buddy," I said as he climbed into the passenger seat, trying to keep my voice light. "Rough day?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands folded in his lap. Marcus has always been methodical about his words, it comes with the autism, but this silence felt different. Heavier. "Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm being dramatic," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She says if I can't handle the bus like a normal kid, maybe I shouldn't ride it at all." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Mrs. Rodriguez was the assistant principal, the woman I'd emailed 3 times in the past month about incidents on bus 47. 3 times I'd been told they were looking into it and that these things happen sometimes with middle schoolers. "What happened today, Marcus?" He reached into his backpack and pulled out his iPad, fingers flying across the screen with the kind of precision that always amazed me. "I've been keeping track," he said, turning the screen toward me. "Look." What I saw made my blood freeze. It was a detailed spreadsheet, of course it was, with columns for dates, times, locations, and incidents. The entries went back to September 3rd, the first day of school. Today was October 15th, 6 weeks of documented harassment, and I'd had no idea. September 8th, 7:22 a.m., Jake Morrison threw my lunch at the bus ceiling. Mr. Patterson laughed and said, "At least it's not on me." September 12th, 3:15 p.m., Aiden Chen called me the weird kid 14 times. Mr. Patterson told him to keep it down back there, but didn't make him stop. The entries kept going. Food thrown at him daily. Kids moving away from him dramatically while making gagging sounds. Someone writing freak on his backpack in permanent marker. And through it all, bus driver Patterson either ignoring it completely or, worse, encouraging it with his comments. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice steady now in that way that meant he'd made a decision about something. "I have a plan to make it stop. But I need you to trust me, okay? And I need you to not be mad at what I'm about to show you." He swiped to a new screen, and I saw something that made my heart skip a beat, a folder labeled evidence with 47 files in it. My quiet, brilliant boy had been busy. The first video file was timestamped September 19th, 7:18 a.m. Marcus had somehow managed to wedge his phone between his seat and the window, angled perfectly to capture the chaos behind him. What I saw made me want to drive straight to the school and drag bus driver Patterson out by his ears. A group of 7th graders, kids I recognized from the neighborhood, were flicking pencil erasers at the back of Marcus's head while he sat rigidly still, staring straight ahead. Each impact made him flinch slightly, but he never turned around. Never said a word. In the background, I could hear Patterson's gravelly voice. "Some people just make themselves targets, you know? Maybe if certain kids tried a little harder to fit in." "Jesus, Marcus," I whispered, pausing the video. "How long has this been going on?" "Since the second day of school," he said matter-of-factly. "The first day, everyone was too nervous to do anything. But Jake Morrison figured out pretty quickly that Mr. Patterson thought I was annoying. Once the bus driver doesn't like you, everyone else knows it's open season." He swiped to another file. This one was from last week, October 8th, 2:47 p.m. The audio was crystal clear, a girl's voice saying, "God, he smells like wet dog," followed by another kid suggesting they should put him out of his misery. But what made my hands shake was Patterson's response. Now, children. We don't talk about putting anything out of its misery on my bus. That's what animal control is for." The kids erupted in laughter. Marcus sat perfectly still in the frame, but I could see his hands clenched into tight fists on his lap. "How did you record all this without anyone noticing?" Marcus pulled a small device from his pocket, something that looked like a pen but clearly wasn't. "Voice recorder. 15-hour battery life. I ordered it on Amazon with my birthday money. The phone videos were trickier, but I figured out the angles." He paused, then looked at me with those serious brown eyes that were so much like his father's. "Mom, there are 23 kids on bus 47. 19 of them have participated in bullying me at least once. 4 have never said anything mean, but they've never told anyone to stop either. And you documented all of it." "I documented all of it," he confirmed. "Including the times I tried to tell Mr. Patterson what was happening. Want to hear what he said on September 25th when I asked him to assign me a different seat?" Before I could answer, he was playing another audio file. Patterson's voice came through tinny but clear. "Listen here, kid. I've been driving this route for 12 years, and I know trouble when I see it. You want my advice? Stop acting so weird all the time. Kids can smell different, and they don't like it. That's not bullying, that's nature." I had to pull over. Right there on Maple Street, I yanked the car into a parking space because my hands were shaking too badly to drive safely. "Mom?" Marcus's voice was small now, uncertain. "Are you mad at me for recording without permission?" I know it might be illegal, but I looked it up and Illinois is a one-party consent state, which means. "I'm not mad at you," I interrupted, turning to face him fully. "Marcus, I'm proud of you for documenting this. And I'm furious at myself for not realizing how bad it was." He was quiet for a moment, then, "It gets worse, Mom. The recordings are just part 1 of my plan." My stomach dropped again. "What's part 2? Marcus smiled for the first time since getting in the car, and it wasn't entirely a nice smile. "I made some friends." The friends Marcus had made weren't what I expected. "Her name is Zoe Chen," he said, pulling up a contact on his phone. "She's Aiden's little sister, 4th grade. Aiden's been calling me names since September, but apparently he's been doing the same thing to Zoe at home for years. I stared at the contact information. You've been talking to a 9-year-old about this? Zoe rides bus 12 in the mornings because she has early art club, but she takes bus 47 home with her brother. She sits 2 seats behind me. Marcus scrolled through what looked like a lengthy text conversation. She started slipping me notes 3 weeks ago. Little drawings at first, dinosaurs, because she noticed my backpack. Then she wrote, "I'm sorry my brother is mean to you." The messages on his screen were surprisingly sophisticated for a 4th grader. Zoe had been documenting her brother's behavior at home, apparently building her own case for why her parents needed to take action. What she discovered was that Aiden bragged about the bus incidents at dinner, describing them in detail while their parents laughed it off as boys being boys. There's more, Marcus continued. Dylan Patterson, that's the bus driver's nephew, 8th grade, he rides our bus too. Lives with his uncle since his mom went to rehab in August. My blood went cold. Marcus, please tell me you haven't been talking to an 8th grader about. He approached me, Mom. 2 weeks ago. Marcus's voice took on that clinical tone he used when he was working through a complex problem. Dylan's been watching everything happen. He told me his Uncle Rick, that's Mr. Patterson, calls me the little robot at home. Says I'm exactly the kind of kid who's going to shoot up a school someday because I'm too weird to function. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This man was discussing my son, my brilliant, gentle, dinosaur-obsessed boy, like he was a potential threat instead of a victim. Dylan's been recording too, Marcus said quietly. But not on the bus. At home. His uncle doesn't know he has his phone back, he's supposed to be grounded until Christmas. Dylan's been capturing their dinner conversation since October 1st, want to know what Mr. Patterson said last Thursday? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded anyway. Marcus played the audio file. The recording was muffled, clearly captured from a phone hidden in Dylan's lap, but Patterson's voice came through clearly enough. That weird kid with the backpack tried to tell me some sob story about the other kids today. I told him if he can't handle a little character building, maybe his mommy should drive him to school herself. These autism kids are all the same, they expect the whole world to bend over backwards for them. Another voice, Dylan's, young and uncertain, maybe he's just scared, Uncle Rick. Patterson's laugh was ugly. Scared? Kid needs to toughen up. His daddy probably ran off because he couldn't handle having a defective son. I would have done the same thing. I had to grip the car door handle to keep from punching something. Marcus watched my face carefully, then reached over and paused the recording. There are 6 more files like that one, he said. Dylan's uncle doesn't just talk about me. He talks about lots of kids on his route. Apparently, I'm not the first one he's decided to make an example of. Jesus, Marcus. How many other kids? That's what Zoe and Dylan and I have been figuring out, he interrupted. We think there are at least 4 other families who've complained about bus 47 this year. The school keeps telling everyone it's isolated incidents, but we're starting to think they're all connected. He pulled up another screen, a shared document with 3 contributors listed. Mom, Marcus said, his voice steady and determined, we're going to expose everything. But I need to know you'll support what we're planning, even if it gets messy. The look in his eyes told me messy was an understatement. The shared document Marcus showed me was titled Operation Clean Sweep, and it was the most organized takedown plan I'd ever seen, which was saying something, considering I'd spent 15 years in corporate project management. We're calling it that because we're going to sweep out all the trash, Zoe had written in the comments section, followed by a dinosaur emoji that was clearly meant for Marcus. The plan had 4 phases, each more elaborate than the last. Phase 1 was complete, they'd gathered 47 recordings spanning 6 weeks. Phase 2 was where things got interesting. We need more evidence from inside the school, Marcus explained, scrolling through their timeline. Dylan overheard his uncle talking to Mrs. Rodriguez last Friday. Apparently, she told him to handle the problem before any parents escalate to the district level. What kind of handling? Marcus pulled up a new audio file, dated October 11th. Dylan's voice was barely audible. Uncle Rick, what did Mrs. Rodriguez mean about handling the problem? Patterson's response made my stomach drop. She means we make it so uncomfortable for certain families that they transfer their kids out. Happens every year. Push the weird ones hard enough, and their parents eventually give up fighting the system. But that's not fair. Fair? Patterson's laugh was harsh. Kid, life isn't fair. That boy's mother has already emailed the school 6 times this month. 6. She's one of those helicopter parents who thinks her precious little snowflake deserves special treatment. Mrs. Rodriguez is tired of dealing with her complaints. 6 emails. I'd only sent 3 to Mrs. Rodriguez. Which meant other parents were complaining too, and the school was lumping us all together as problem families. Phase 2 starts Monday, Marcus continued. Dylan's going to leave his phone recording during his uncle's lunch break. Bus drivers eat in the maintenance building, and that's where they talk about stuff. What kind of stuff? The kind that's going to get people fired, Zoe had written in the shared doc, followed by a series of angry face emojis. Marcus switched to phase 3, and I felt my chest tighten. This is where it gets complicated, Mom. We need adult help, but not from anyone at Riverside Elementary. He'd somehow gotten in touch with Sarah Martinez, a reporter from Channel 7 News who'd done a series on bullying in schools last spring. According to their messages, Sarah had been looking for a follow-up story and was very interested in their documentation. Marcus, you contacted a news reporter without telling me? I used Dylan's phone so it couldn't be traced back to our family, he said matter-of-factly. Sarah thinks we have enough evidence for a full investigation. She wants to interview all 3 of us next Wednesday, after school. Absolutely not. You're 12 years old. Mom. His voice cut through my panic with surprising authority. They called me defective on a recording. Dylan's uncle said my dad left because he was ashamed of me. How is staying quiet going to make any of this better? The words hit like ice water. Marcus had never talked about his father leaving, not directly. David had walked out when Marcus was diagnosed at age 4, claiming he couldn't handle the stress, and we'd built our life around the fact that it was just us. But hearing Patterson's casual cruelty about it, seeing how that poison had reached my son's ears. What's phase 4? I asked, my voice barely steady. Marcus grinned, actually grinned, and it was the most dangerous expression I'd ever seen on his face. November 18th. The monthly school board meeting. Did you know they're legally required to allow public comment? And did you know Dylan's aunt works in the district office? Marcus. She's going to get us on the agenda, Mom. 20 minutes to present our evidence to the entire school board, with Channel 7 cameras rolling and every parent in the district watching. He paused. Including Patterson's boss. And Mrs. Rodriguez's boss. And the superintendent who's been telling everyone that Riverside Elementary has an exemplary anti-bullying program. And what exactly are you planning to present? Marcus's smile widened. Everything. The next morning, Marcus left for school with his usual precision, backpack organized, lunch packed in order of when he'd eat each item, dinosaur notebook tucked exactly where it always was. But as I watched Bus 47 lumber down our street at 7:23 a.m. sharp, I felt like I was sending him into enemy territory. My phone buzzed at 9:15 a.m. A text from Marcus, Phase 2 accelerated. Emergency lunch meeting today. Dylan heard something. I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold. Emergency lunch meeting. My 12-year-old son was running covert operations with a 4th grader and an 8th grader whose uncle was systematically torturing kids for sport. At 11:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Chen? This is Dylan Patterson. Marcus gave me your number for emergencies. The voice was young, nervous, but trying to sound adult. I think this qualifies. My heart rate spiked. Dylan? What's wrong? Where's Marcus? He's fine. We're all fine. But my uncle. Mrs. Rodriguez called him into the office this morning. I heard him on the phone with her before he left for work. She's moving up their timeline. What timeline? The one where they kicked Marcus off the bus permanently. Today. Mrs. Rodriguez is going to call you at 2:30 p.m. and tell you there was an incident on the bus that requires Marcus to find alternative transportation effective immediately. I grabbed a pen, my project management instincts kicking in. What kind of incident? The kind they're going to make up. Dylan's voice cracked slightly. My uncle told Mrs. Rodriguez that Marcus has been increasingly disruptive and potentially threatening to other students. He's going to file a report saying Marcus made verbal threats against Jake Morrison this morning. That's impossible. Marcus doesn't make threats. I know. But Jake's going to back up the story. Uncle Rick promised Jake's mom he'd write a letter of recommendation for Jake's high school application if Jake cooperates. And Mrs. Rodriguez is going to use the fake incident to justify banning Marcus from all district transportation. The calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. They weren't just covering their tracks, they were actively framing my son to make their problem disappear. Dylan, how do you know all this? Because I recorded the phone call, he said, and I could hear the pride mixed with fear in his voice. My uncle's loud when he thinks no one's listening. I've got 17 minutes of him and Mrs. Rodriguez planning the whole thing. Dear God. It gets worse, Mrs. Chen. They're not just targeting Marcus. There's a 5th grade girl named Emma Santos whose parents have been complaining about Bus 23. And a 7th grader on Bus 15 whose mom emailed the district office twice last week. They have a whole system for making problem families go away. I was pacing now, my mind racing through implications. Dylan, where are you calling from? The library. I'm supposed to be in study hall, but I snuck out. Mrs. Peterson doesn't take attendance until the end of class. He paused. Mrs. Chen, there's something else. Sarah Martinez wants to meet with us today instead of next Wednesday. She says if the school's accelerating their timeline, we need to accelerate ours. Today? Dylan, I can't just. Channel 7 has a mobile unit. Sarah can meet us at Riverside Park at 4 p.m. All 3 of us kids, plus you and Mrs. Santos, Emma's mom. Sarah already contacted her. The pieces were moving too fast. This morning I'd been a single mom trying to protect her son from bullies. Now I was apparently coordinating a multifamily media expose of systematic abuse in the school district. Dylan, what aren't you telling me? A long pause. Then, my uncle doesn't know I've been staying with him because my mom's in rehab. He thinks it's because she's getting her life together. But I heard him talking to Mrs. Rodriguez about my unstable home situation and how kids from broken families are more likely to cause problems at school. The casual destruction of it hit me like a physical blow. Patterson wasn't just targeting my son, he was weaponizing Dylan's family trauma against other kids. He's going to throw me under the bus too, Dylan continued, his voice small now. Probably literally. Sarah Martinez thinks we have maybe 6 hours before they start covering their tracks in ways we can't undo. My phone beeped with another incoming call. The display showed Riverside Elementary. Dylan, I said, I need you to get back to class and act normal until 4 p.m. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. And Dylan? You're incredibly brave for doing this. I switched to the incoming call, already knowing what I was about to hear. Mrs. Chen? This is Mrs. Rodriguez from Riverside Elementary. I'm afraid we need to discuss your son's transportation situation. I let Mrs. Rodriguez's call go to voicemail and immediately dialed Marcus instead. Mom? His voice was tight with controlled anxiety. Did they call you already? They tried. I didn't answer. Where are you right now? Math class. Mrs. Patterson, no relation to the bus driver, is letting me step out because I told her I felt sick. I could hear him moving, probably into the hallway. Mom, it's happening faster than we planned. Jake Morrison pulled me aside after second period and told me I should watch my back on the bus ride home. My grip tightened on the phone. Marcus, you're not getting on that bus today. I know. Dylan already texted me the code word. Operation Clean Sweep is moving to phase 4 immediately. He paused, and I could practically hear him thinking. Mom, Sarah Martinez called the school district office an hour ago and requested interviews with Superintendent Walsh and the transportation director. She didn't tell them why, just said Channel 7 was doing a follow-up piece on student safety initiatives. How do you know that? Because Dylan's aunt works in that office, remember? She called Dylan's mom's phone, except Dylan has it because his mom's in rehab, and left a panicked voicemail about a reporter asking questions about bus routes and disciplinary procedures. The web of connections was making my head spin. Marcus, slow down. What exactly did the voicemail say? I recorded Dylan playing it back. Want to hear? Before I could answer, he was playing audio through his phone. A woman's voice, stressed and speaking quickly. Lynn, it's Debbie from district. Some reporter is sniffing around the transportation department asking about incident reports and parent complaints. Walsh wants all bus supervisors to review their documentation before end of business today. Make sure everything's filed properly, if you know what I mean. Call me back. They're sanitizing the records, I breathed. Dylan thinks so too. But here's the thing, Mom, they can clean up the official reports, but they can't erase our recordings. And they definitely can't erase what Dylan's aunt is about to find when she accidentally makes copies of everything before it gets shredded. Marcus, that's illegal? Maybe. But so is systematically abusing kids and then covering it up. His voice had that steely determination that reminded me so much of his father, back when David still fought for things that mattered. Mom, I need you to pick me up at 2:15. Tell the office I have a doctor's appointment. Why 2:15? Because that's when bus 47 leaves for the afternoon route. I want Mr. Patterson to see me getting in your car instead of his bus. I want him to know that we know what they're planning. The strategic thinking behind it was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. Marcus, what if that makes him angrier? Then he'll make mistakes. Angry people always make mistakes, and we'll be recording when he does. He paused. Mom, there's one more thing. Emma Santos, the 5th grader whose parents complained about bus 23? Her little brother Carlos is in my class. Okay. Carlos told me that Emma's been having nightmares about school for 3 weeks. She won't tell their parents why, but she's been asking to stay home sick almost every day. Their mom thinks Emma's just being dramatic, but Carlos thinks something bad is happening on her bus. The pattern was becoming sickeningly clear. How many kids, Marcus? We think at least 12, across 4 different bus routes. All kids who don't fit in somehow. Dylan's been mapping it out during lunch. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Mom, what if we're not just exposing bullying? What if we're exposing something bigger? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Chen, this is Sarah Martinez from Channel 7. Can you meet at 3:30 instead of 4 o'clock? We may have a bigger story than anyone realized. The district office just issued a memo about transportation policy reviews effective immediately. Someone's trying to get ahead of this. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what we were about to unleash. Marcus, I said, I'll be there at 2:15. And Marcus? Whatever happens next, I want you to know I'm proud of you for fighting back. Thanks, Mom. See you soon. As I hung up, Mrs. Rodriguez's voicemail notification popped up on my screen. I didn't need to listen to it to know what she was going to say. The war had officially begun. I picked up Marcus at exactly 2:15, watching through the windshield as bus 47 idled in the pickup lane. Through the driver's window, I could see Patterson's thick silhouette, and I swear he was staring directly at us as Marcus climbed into my car. He saw, Marcus said matter-of-factly, buckling his seatbelt. Good. We drove to Riverside Park in tense silence, both of us processing how quickly everything was accelerating. When we arrived, I spotted the Channel 7 mobile unit immediately, a white van with satellite equipment that looked far too official for a small-town park on a Wednesday afternoon. Sarah Martinez was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a notepad already filled with writing. She was standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, Hispanic, probably around my age, with worry lines etched deep around her eyes. Mrs. Chen? I'm Sarah, and this is Elena Santos, Emma's mother. Elena Santos looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. I got Sarah's call 2 hours ago. I had no idea other families were dealing with this. How bad has it been for Emma? I asked. Elena's voice cracked slightly. 3 weeks ago, she started begging me to drive her to school. When I asked why, she said the bus kids were testing her. I thought she meant normal middle school drama. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo of a small, dark-haired girl with anxious eyes. Yesterday, I found this in her backpack. She handed me a crumpled piece of paper with "Wet Back Go Home" written in black marker, followed by crude drawings of what looked like Emma being pushed off a bus. Jesus, I whispered. The bus driver told Emma that if she reported it, he'd make sure she got transferred to the special bus with the other problem kids, Elena continued. She's been hiding these notes for 3 weeks because she was afraid they'd make her ride the short bus. Sarah was recording everything, her expression growing darker by the minute. Elena, what bus route is Emma on? Bus 23. Driver's name is Mike Kowalski. Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look. Dylan mentioned bus 23, Marcus said quietly. His uncle Rick was bragging about how Mike was handling his problem kids better than the other drivers this year. They're coordinating, I realized. This isn't individual drivers being cruel, they're sharing strategies. Sarah nodded grimly. That's what I'm starting to think too. Mrs. Chen, I need to tell you something. After I called the district office this morning, I got a very interesting phone call from the superintendent's secretary. Apparently, Dr. Walsh wants to meet with me tomorrow morning to discuss the district's award-winning transportation program and address any misconceptions about our student safety protocols. They're going into damage control mode. Exactly. Which means we have maybe 18 hours before this story gets buried under layers of official PR bullshit. Sarah looked directly at Marcus. Are you sure you're ready for what's about to happen? Once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Marcus straightened his shoulders. Mr. Patterson said my dad left because I'm defective. Mrs. Rodriguez is trying to ban me from the bus by making up lies about me threatening people. How could telling the truth be worse than that? Elena Santos was staring at Marcus with something like awe. You're 12 years old and you've been investigating this by yourself? Not by myself, Marcus corrected. Dylan Patterson and Zoe Chen helped. And now we have Channel 7 and both our moms. He looked at Sarah. When do we do the interviews? Right now, Sarah said, gesturing toward the van. But first, I need to know if either of you have contacted lawyers. Because based on what you've shown me so far, this isn't just a news story anymore, this is evidence of civil rights violations and potentially criminal harassment of minors. My blood went cold. Criminal? Mrs. Chen, your son has recordings of school employees using racial slurs against students and systematically targeting children based on disabilities. Elena's daughter has been subjected to racist harassment with administrative knowledge. If we can prove the district knew this was happening and covered it up. Sarah paused. We're talking about federal investigations. Lawsuits. People losing not just their jobs, but potentially facing criminal charges. Marcus looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Mom, are we going to let them keep hurting kids because we're scared of making it bigger? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mrs. Rodriguez again. This time, I answered. Mrs. Chen, I've been trying to reach you about Marcus's situation. I'm afraid we've had another incident on bus 47 this afternoon, and I really need you to come in tomorrow morning to discuss. What incident? I interrupted. My son wasn't on the bus this afternoon. A pause. Then, I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion in our reports. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting to clarify. There's no confusion, Mrs. Rodriguez. And yes, let's absolutely schedule that meeting. I looked at Sarah, who was grinning and holding up her recording equipment. How about Friday morning? Say, around 10 a.m.? I'll be bringing some documentation of my own. After I hung up, Sarah was practically bouncing on her feet. Please tell me you recorded that. Every word, Marcus said, holding up his phone. She just tried to lie about an incident that couldn't have happened. On record. Elena Santos laughed for the first time since I'd met her. These kids are going to take down the entire transportation department, aren't they? Not just the transportation department, Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with a kind of expression that probably made school administrators very nervous. I think we're about to expose something much bigger than anyone realized. The interview with Sarah Martinez lasted 2 hours, and by the end of it, Marcus had shown a composure that frankly amazed me. He'd methodically walked through each piece of evidence, explaining his documentation system like he was presenting a science project instead of exposing months of systematic abuse. The pattern recognition was actually pretty simple once I started tracking it, he told Sarah's camera with matter-of-fact precision. Bus drivers Patterson, Kowalski, and Henderson all started their behavior management tactics within the same week in September. That suggests coordination at a supervisory level. Sarah paused her recording. Marcus, how did you figure out there were 3 drivers involved? Dylan's aunt in the district office. She mentioned that 3 drivers had requested meetings with Transportation Supervisor Janet Kellerman on September 12th. All on the same day, all asking for guidance on handling disruptive student populations. Marcus pulled up another note on his iPad. Dylan recorded his uncle practicing what he was going to say before that meeting. Want to hear it? What came through his phone speakers made my stomach turn. Patterson's voice, slightly muffled. We got too many special needs kids and weird kids on these routes, Janet. The normal kids are complaining to their parents, and the parents are starting to ask why their kids have to deal with freaks and retards on the bus every day. Elena Santos grabbed my arm, her face pale. That's exactly what Mike Kowalski said to Emma. He told her that normal American kids shouldn't have to put up with people like her family. Sarah's expression had gone from professional interest to barely controlled fury. How many more recordings like that do you have? 17, Marcus said. But the one from yesterday is probably the most important. He queued up a new file, dated October 16th, yesterday. Dylan's voice came through first, young and nervous. Uncle Rick, why did Mrs. Kellerman want you to call her back? Patterson's response was chilling. Just coordinating our stories for tomorrow, kid. Channel 7's been sniffing around asking questions, so we need to make sure everyone's paperwork matches up. Janet's got meetings with all the drivers tonight to go over what we can and can't say about certain families. What families? The problem ones. Parents who think their little snowflakes deserve special treatment. We're documenting everything now, every incident, every complaint, every reason why certain kids might need to find other transportation options. Dylan's voice was barely audible. Are you going to get in trouble? Patterson's laugh was ugly. Trouble? Kid, we're cleaning house. By next month, half these problem families will have transferred their kids to other schools or started driving them themselves. Janet says the district's been wanting to reduce transportation costs anyway. This just gives them an excuse to cut routes. Sarah stopped the playback, her pen frozen over her notepad. They're systematically pushing families out to save money on bus routes? That's what we think, Elena said. Emma's friend Sophia transferred to St. Catherine's last month. Her parents told everyone it was for better academic opportunities, but Sophia told Emma it was because the bus situation had gotten unbearable. How many transfers? Sarah asked. Marcus consulted his iPad. I cross-referenced the school directory from September 1st with current enrollment. 13 families had transferred their kids out of Riverside Elementary since the school year started. That's unusual. Typically, you see maybe 3 or 4 mid-year transfers. 13 families, I repeated, the number hitting me like a physical blow. How many kids is that? 21 students total. And here's the interesting part, Dylan's aunt ran the transportation records for those families. All 21 kids had been flagged in the system as requiring additional behavioral monitoring on their bus routes. Sarah was scribbling furiously now. Marcus, do you have contact information for any of those families? 3 of them, he said. Dylan's been really helpful with accessing his aunt's work files. She prints everything at home because the district office printer is always broken, and Dylan's been photographing the documents before she takes them to work. That's... Sarah paused, considering her words carefully. That's incredibly valuable evidence, but we need to be very careful about how we obtained it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Chen, this is Janet Kellerman, transportation supervisor for the district. I understand you have some concerns about bus 47. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you and Mrs. Rodriguez tomorrow at 1 p.m. to address the situation before it escalates further. Please confirm receipt of this message. I showed the text to Sarah, who whistled low. They're panicking. Janet Kellerman never contacts parents directly, she's strictly administrative. Should I respond? I asked. Marcus looked up from his iPad. Mom, Dylan just texted me. His uncle got called into an emergency meeting at the district office. It started 20 minutes ago. Sarah checked her watch. It's 5:30 p.m. They're having crisis meetings after hours. She looked at all of us with an expression I couldn't quite read. I think we need to accelerate our timeline again. How would you all feel about going public tomorrow instead of waiting for the school board meeting? Tomorrow? Elena's voice cracked. But Emma doesn't even know I'm here talking to you. Which might be better, Sarah said gently. Because I have a feeling that by tomorrow afternoon, this story is going to be much bigger than 3 kids and 2 buses. Marcus was typing rapidly on his iPad. Dylan says his aunt just came home early from work looking really upset. She's on the phone with someone now, talking about document retention policies and media liability. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying speed, and I suddenly realized we weren't just fighting for Marcus and Emma and Dylan anymore. We were about to expose something that went all the way to the top. At 6:47 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice I'd never heard before spoke in rapid, panicked whispers. Is this Mrs. Chen? Marcus's mom? Yes, who is this? My name is Janet Kellerman. I'm the transportation supervisor for the district. Her voice was shaking. I need to meet with you tonight. Privately. Before this goes any further. I looked at Sarah Martinez, who was still packing up her recording equipment. She immediately gestured for me to put the call on speaker. Mrs. Kellerman, I'm not sure what you mean by this going further, I said carefully. Please don't play games with me. I know about the reporter. I know about the recordings. And I know that in about 12 hours, my career and probably several others are going to be destroyed. She took a shaky breath. But there are things you don't know. Things about how high this goes and how many people are going to get hurt if this story breaks tomorrow. Marcus looked up from his iPad, eyes wide. Sarah was frantically scribbling notes and making hand gestures for me to keep her talking. What kind of things, Mrs. Kellerman? The transportation cost-cutting wasn't my idea. It came from above, way above. Superintendent Walsh has been under pressure from the school board to reduce the district's operating expenses by 15% this year. When I told him we could eliminate 3 bus routes by encouraging problem families to seek alternative transportation, he didn't ask questions about methodology. Elena Santos had gone completely pale. You mean this was official policy? Not officially. Never officially. But when Walsh forwarded me an email from board member Patricia Hendricks asking why the district was spending so much money on specialized transportation accommodations, the message was pretty clear. Janet's voice cracked. I'm not making excuses. What Patterson and the others did was wrong. But I need you to understand, if this comes out the way it's going to come out, it's not just going to destroy 3 bus drivers. It's going to take down the superintendent, 2 school board members, and probably trigger a state investigation into the entire district. Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement, but her expression remained professionally neutral. Mrs. Kellerman, are you saying that board members knew about the harassment? A long pause. Patricia Hendricks specifically asked me to provide monthly reports on transportation efficiency improvements starting in September. When I sent her data showing 13 family transfers and 3 route eliminations, she replied with excellent progress and asked me to continue current strategies. Marcus was typing furiously on his iPad. Mom, he whispered, Dylan just sent me something. His aunt's been on the phone with Mrs. Kellerman for the past hour. Debbie's crying and saying something about needing to find a new job. Mrs. Kellerman, I said into the phone, why are you telling me this? Because I have a daughter too. She's 15, and she goes to Riverside High School. If this explodes tomorrow the way I think it will, she's going to spend the rest of her high school career known as the daughter of a woman who systematically abused special needs kids to save money. Her voice broke completely. And because there are 4 other districts in the county using similar efficiency strategies. This isn't just happening here. The scope of it hit me like a freight train. 4 other districts? Walsh presented our cost reduction model at the County Superintendents Association meeting in October. 3 districts implemented pilot programs last month. Riverside Elementary isn't even the worst. Lincoln Middle School eliminated 5 routes in 3 weeks using Patterson's methodology. Sarah was making frantic keep-going gestures. Mrs. Kellerman, what exactly are you proposing? Meet with me tonight. Bring your lawyer if you have one. Let me give you everything, all the emails, all the directives, all the documentation that shows this went way beyond 3 rogue bus drivers. In exchange. She hesitated. In exchange, I want to be the whistleblower instead of the villain. Marcus looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Mom, Dylan says his aunt is packing boxes. Like, work boxes. With files. Mrs. Kellerman, are you willing to go on record with Channel 7? If it means those board members go down with me? Absolutely. The revolution had just gotten a whole lot bigger. At 8:15 p.m., I found myself sitting in the parking lot of Denny's on Route 47, waiting to meet the woman who'd orchestrated months of systematic abuse against my son. Janet Kellerman had chosen a location, somewhere public but not too public, and I brought Sarah Martinez despite Kellerman's request to come alone. She's here, Sarah said, nodding toward a silver Honda pulling into a space 3 rows away. Gray hair, looks like she hasn't slept in days. Janet Kellerman looked exactly like I'd imagined, mid-50s, the kind of administrative professional who'd spent decades perfecting the art of managing people through spreadsheets and policy memos. But tonight, she looked broken. Her hand shook as she approached our booth, clutching a banker's box that seemed too heavy for her slight frame. Mrs. Chen? She slid into the booth across from us, setting the box on the table with obvious relief. Thank you for coming. And Ms. Martinez, I assume? Sarah nodded, her recorder already running. Mrs. Kellerman, before we start, I need to confirm that you're willing to have this conversation recorded. Record everything, Janet said, her voice hollow. At this point, documentation is the only thing that might save any of us. She opened the box, revealing stacks of printed emails, spreadsheets, and what looked like official district letterhead. The top document was an email dated August 23rd, with the subject line FY 2024 Transportation Efficiency Initiative. This came from Superintendent Walsh 3 days before school started, Janet explained, sliding the paper across to me. Read the highlighted section. The email was clinical in its cruelty. Transportation costs have increased 23% over the past 2 years, primarily due to specialized routing accommodations and behavioral management requirements. Department head should explore creative solutions for reducing route complexity while maintaining compliance with federal accessibility mandates. Creative solutions, I repeated, the phrase tasting bitter. That's administrative speak for find ways to make expensive kids go away without technically breaking the law, Janet said. When I presented my preliminary strategies at the August 30th staff meeting, Walsh specifically asked about measurable outcomes and implementation timelines. Sarah leaned forward. What strategies did you present? Janet pulled out another document, a PowerPoint printout titled Behavioral Intervention and Route Optimization. Slide 7 made my stomach clench. Target demographics for alternative transportation counseling. The bullet points read like a hit list: students requiring individualized behavioral support, families with documented complaint histories, students from single-parent households with limited advocacy resources, non-English speaking families unfamiliar with district grievance procedures. You literally created a profile for which kids to target, Sarah said, her professional composure cracking slightly. I called it counseling families toward transportation alternatives that better meet their children's needs, Janet said, looking ashamed. Walsh loved the terminology. Said it sounded student-centered and solution-focused. I was scanning through more emails, each one more damning than the last. A September 15th message from board member Patricia Hendricks. Janet, excellent progress on route efficiency. The October board meeting will include a presentation on transportation cost savings. Please prepare a summary of successful family transitions. They were going to present this as a success story, I realized. Patricia specifically requested data on special education transportation savings, Janet confirmed. When I told her we'd reduced specialized routing needs by 37% in 6 weeks, she asked me to prepare a district-wide implementation proposal for the spring semester. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Mom, Dylan's aunt just showed up at their house with 3 boxes of files. She's crying and telling Dylan's grandmother that she might get fired tomorrow. Dylan's recording everything. I showed the message to Sarah, whose eyes lit up. Janet, is Debbie Patterson about to become a problem for you? Janet's face went pale. Debbie's been my assistant for 8 years. She knows where every document is stored, every conversation that happened, every directive that came down from Walsh's office. She paused, rubbing her temples. This afternoon, Walsh called an emergency meeting with the legal department. Debbie was asked to pull all transportation-related correspondence from the past 4 months. For what purpose? Document review and retention policy compliance, Janet said bitterly. Which is lawyer speak for, destroy anything that makes us look bad. Sarah was taking notes rapidly. Did Debbie comply? She printed everything first. Told me she was backing up files in case the server crashed. Janet looked directly at me. Mrs. Chen, Debbie Patterson has copies of every email, every directive, every piece of documentation that proves this came from the top. And based on what happened this afternoon, I think she's about to turn whistleblower too. My phone rang. Dylan Patterson, calling at 9:23 p.m. on a school night. Mrs. Chen, his voice was excited and terrified in equal measure. My aunt wants to meet with you and Sarah Martinez tomorrow morning before school. She says she has something that's going to blow this whole thing wide open. The revolution was about to get a whole lot more interesting. At 5:47 a.m. the next morning, I was sitting in my car outside Riverside Elementary with Sarah Martinez, waiting for Debbie Patterson to arrive with what she promised would be the smoking gun that ends all of this. My coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but I couldn't stop my hands from shaking enough to drink it anyway. There, Sarah pointed toward the staff parking lot. Blue Subaru, license plate starts with DB4. Debbie Patterson looked like a woman who'd aged 10 years overnight. She approached our car carrying a laptop bag and what appeared to be a portable scanner, her movements quick and nervous like someone expecting to be caught at any moment. I've got 45 minutes before Walsh gets here for his morning meeting, she said, sliding into Sarah's back seat. After that, building security gets suspicious about unauthorized visitors. She opened the laptop bag, revealing a tablet connected to a small scanner. I've been digitizing files since midnight. Janet told you about the Transportation Efficiency Initiative, but what she doesn't know is that Patricia Hendricks has been coordinating similar programs in 4 other districts. Sarah's recorder was already running. What kind of coordination? Debbie pulled up an email dated October 8th, sender listed as Fendricks at countyboardassociation.org. The subject line read, Q3 results, multi-district cost reduction pilot program. Patricia isn't just a Riverside board member, Debbie explained. She's the treasurer for the County Board Association, and she's been tracking cost savings across all 5 districts participating in what she calls targeted family transition strategies. The email was a detailed spreadsheet showing student transfers, route eliminations, and budget savings for Riverside Elementary, Lincoln Middle School, Westfield Primary, Oak Grove High School, and Sunset Hills Elementary. The numbers were staggering: 127 students transferred out across 5 schools, 19 bus routes eliminated, total savings projected at $847,000 for the school year. Jesus Christ, I whispered. This is countywide. It gets worse, Debbie said, scrolling to an attachment labeled Phase 2 Implementation Timeline. Patricia's proposing to expand the program to all 15 districts in the county next year. She's calling it the Student-Centered Transportation Optimization Initiative, and she's scheduled to present it to the State Board of Education in December. Sarah was leaning forward, reading over Debbie's shoulder. They're planning to take this statewide? Patricia's been documenting everything as a best practices case study. She thinks she's going to win awards for innovative cost management. Debbie pulled up another document, a draft presentation with the state education logo. Look at slide 23. The slide was titled Measurable Outcomes, Improved School Climate Through Strategic Family Engagement. The bullet points made my vision blur with rage: reduced behavioral incidents on transportation routes by 73%, decreased special accommodation requests by 41%, improved satisfaction scores among mainstream families by 28%. They're calling it improved satisfaction, I said, my voice barely controlled. They terrorized kids into leaving and they're calling it improved satisfaction. Debbie nodded grimly. But here's what's going to destroy them. She opened a new file, an audio recording dated yesterday at 4:30 p.m. Patricia called an emergency conference call with all 5 superintendents yesterday afternoon. I was asked to take minutes. The recording quality was crystal clear. Patricia Hendrick's voice came through first, authoritative and completely without remorse. We have a potential media situation developing in Riverside. I need confirmation from all districts that documentation protocols have been followed and that any problematic communications have been appropriately archived. Walsh's voice was next, nervous and deferential. Patricia, we've completed the document review. Legal has advised us that all transportation-related correspondence should be classified under personnel privacy protections. Excellent. What about the families involved? The Chin family and Santos family have been flagged for individual consultation meetings. We're prepared to offer alternative education placements if necessary. My blood went cold. Alternative education placements? Debbie paused the recording. That's district code for transferring kids to the alternative school program. It would effectively ban Marcus and Emma from mainstream education in this district. Sarah's jaw had dropped. They were going to force your kids into alternative school to cover this up? Listen to the rest, Debbie said, resuming the playback. Patricia's voice continued. I need this contained before December 15th. The state presentation is too important to risk over a few disgruntled families. Whatever it takes. Another voice, one I didn't recognize. Patricia, what if the families go public before we can implement containment strategies? Patricia's laugh was chilling. Then we make sure their credibility is thoroughly undermined. Single mothers with special needs children make accusations all the time. School districts deal with these situations by following proper procedures and maintaining professional documentation standards. The recording ended, leaving us sitting in stunned silence. She's planning to destroy your reputations, Debbie said quietly. All of you. The families, the kids, anyone who threatens this program. Sarah was already on her phone. I'm calling the newsroom. We're going live at noon. My phone rang at 6:23 a.m., jolting me awake from the 2 hours of sleep I'd managed after leaving Debbie Patterson in the school parking lot. The caller ID showed Marcus's number. Mom, you need to get here now. His voice was tight with controlled panic. Mr. Patterson just pulled Dylan off bus 47 in front of everyone and told him he's no longer welcome on district transportation due to family instability issues. I was already reaching for my clothes. Where are you? At Dylan's bus stop with Zoe. Dylan's crying and all the other kids are staring. Mr. Patterson made this big announcement about how some families aren't stable enough to handle the privilege of district transportation and how Dylan needed to find alternative arrangements immediately. The cruelty was breathtaking, even by Patterson's standards. Is Dylan okay? He's scared, Mom. And he's still got his phone recording everything, but Mr. Patterson saw it and tried to grab it from him. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. Mom, I think Dylan's aunt told someone what she gave us yesterday morning. My blood went cold. What makes you think that? Because Mrs. Rodriguez is here too. She just pulled up in her car and she's talking to Mr. Patterson right now. I heard her say something about accelerated interventions and family instability documentation. I was in my car now, backing out of the driveway at 6:28 a.m. Marcus, I need you and Zoe to stay exactly where you are. Don't get on any bus, don't talk to Mrs. Rodriguez, don't. Mom, she's walking toward us. The line went quiet, but I could hear muffled voices in the background. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came through clearly. Marcus, I need you to come with me so we can call your mother about your transportation situation. There seem to be some safety concerns that need immediate attention. I'm not going anywhere without my mom, Marcus replied, and I'd never been prouder of his stubborn streak. Young man, I'm not asking. District policy requires that students with pending disciplinary reviews be supervised during transportation transitions. What disciplinary review? Marcus's voice was getting higher. I haven't done anything wrong. Your behavioral documentation suggests otherwise. Now come with me. I pressed harder on the accelerator, running my second red light in 5 minutes. Marcus, are you still there? Yeah, but Mrs. Rodriguez is calling someone on her phone. She's saying something about implementing emergency protocols for the Chin minor and needing immediate family services consultation. Family services. They were threatening to call CPS. Mom, Marcus's voice was barely audible now. There's another car here. A white sedan with county plates. A woman in a suit just got out and she's talking to Mrs. Rodriguez. I could hear the woman's voice in the background, professional and clinical. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm here about the family stability assessment request. Where's the minor in question? Right here, Ms. Carlisle. Marcus Chen, age 12. Mother has been unresponsive to district communication regarding behavioral concerns, and we have documentation suggesting an unstable home environment. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. They weren't just trying to discredit us, they were trying to take Marcus away from me entirely. Marcus, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I need you to put me on speaker and hand the phone to the woman from county services. Ms. Carlisle? My mom wants to talk to you. There was rustling as the phone changed hands, then a crisp professional voice. This is Linda Carlisle from County Family Services. Are you Marcus Chen's guardian? I'm his mother, and I'm 3 minutes away from that bus stop. Whatever Mrs. Rodriguez has told you is part of a systematic cover-up that we're exposing today on Channel 7 News. A pause. Ma'am, we have documentation of concerning behavioral patterns and family instability indicators that require immediate assessment. What you have is fabricated documentation designed to silence a whistleblower family. Check your voicemail, Ms. Carlisle. Sarah Martinez from Channel 7 left you a message at 6:15 this morning about interviewing families involved in the county transportation abuse scandal. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear muffled conversation in the background. Mrs. Chen, I think we need to have a more detailed conversation about this situation. I pulled into the bus stop parking area at exactly 6:34 a.m. to find my son standing between a county social worker and a school administrator, holding his ground like the fierce, brilliant kid I'd raised him to be. The war was about to get nuclear. I stepped out of my car at 6:34 a.m. to find Marcus standing perfectly still between Linda Carlisle and Mrs. Rodriguez, his dinosaur backpack clutched against his chest like armor. Dylan was 20 feet away, tears streaming down his face while his uncle Rick Patterson loomed over him making sharp, angry gestures. Zoe Chen stood frozen by the bus stop sign, her fourth-grade eyes wide with terror. Ms. Carlisle, I called out, my voice carrying across the parking lot. I'm Jennifer Chen, Marcus's mother. The social worker turned toward me, her expression professionally neutral but clearly reassessing the situation. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with a kind of carefully maintained composure that came from years of navigating family crises. Mrs. Chen, I need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding Marcus's home environment and recent behavioral changes at school. What behavioral changes? I asked, positioning myself directly between her and my son. Be specific. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward, pulling out a manila folder that looked suspiciously thick for a 12-year-old who'd never been in trouble. We have documented incidents of threatening language toward other students, refusal to follow driver instructions, and what appears to be surveillance behavior on school transportation. Surveillance behavior? Recording other students without permission, documenting private conversations, engaging in secretive communication with other minors. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice took on that rehearsed quality that meant she'd practiced this speech. These behaviors, combined with his father's abandonment and your recent confrontational interactions with school staff, suggest a concerning pattern of family dysfunction. Marcus looked up at me, his brown eyes blazing with fury. Mom, she's lying about everything. I never threatened anyone. The recordings were of kids bullying me, not private conversations. Marcus, please don't interrupt the adults, Ms. Carlisle said gently, but I caught the way she was studying his body language, his speech patterns, his obvious intelligence. Actually, I said, I want to hear what Marcus has to say. Ms. Carlisle, are you aware that Channel 7 News is broadcasting an expose about systematic abuse in the county school transportation system at noon today? Her professional mask slipped slightly. Mrs. Chen, regardless of any media involvement, we have protocols to follow when children's safety is in question. Whose safety? Marcus asked, his voice stronger now. Mine? Because Mr. Patterson over there has been calling me defective for 6 weeks while kids threw food at me. Or Dylan's safety? Because his uncle just humiliated him in front of 30 students for helping expose abuse. Ms. Carlisle's attention sharpened. Marcus, can you tell me more about what you mean by abuse? Mrs. Rodriguez moved quickly to interrupt. Ms. Carlisle, the minor has been coached by his mother to make these allegations. Our investigation shows a pattern of. Your investigation? I pulled out my phone, opening the audio file from Dylan's recording 2 days ago. You mean the investigation where you and bus driver Patterson planned to fabricate disciplinary incidents to justify banning Marcus from transportation? I hit play. Patterson's voice filled the morning air. Listen here, kid. I've been driving this route for 12 years, and I know trouble when I see it. You want my advice? Stop acting so weird all the time. Ms. Carlisle's expression shifted from professional skepticism to sharp attention. Mrs. Chen, how did you obtain that recording? Students have the right to document harassment in school environments, I said. Especially when school officials are participating in the harassment. That recording was obtained illegally, Mrs. Rodriguez snapped. And it's been taken completely out of context. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension with startling clarity. Ms. Carlisle, would you like to hear the recording from yesterday where Mrs. Rodriguez and Superintendent Walsh discussed transferring me and Emma Santos to alternative school to cover up their transportation abuse program? The social worker went very still. Marcus, that's a serious accusation. It's also a true one, Sarah Martinez's voice called out as she approached from the Channel 7 van that had just pulled into the parking lot. Ms. Carlisle, I think you're going to want to hear about the county-wide conspiracy we're exposing in about 5 hours. Mrs. Rodriguez had gone pale. Patterson was backing toward his bus. And Ms. Carlisle was looking at all of us like she was beginning to realize she'd walked into something much bigger than a routine family assessment. Mrs. Chen, she said carefully, I think we need to continue this conversation somewhere more private. The revolution was about to go prime time. By 7:15 a.m., the bus stop had transformed into an impromptu crime scene. Ms. Carlisle had called for backup, not to remove Marcus, but to document what she was now calling potential institutional abuse of minors. 2 additional county vehicles had arrived, along with a district security officer who looked increasingly uncomfortable as Sarah Martinez's camera captured everything. Mrs. Chen, Ms. Carlisle said, her voice taking on the crisp efficiency of someone who'd just realized she was dealing with a major case, I need to inform you that based on what I've heard this morning, we're opening an investigation into the school district, not your family. Mrs. Rodriguez made a strangled sound. Ms. Carlisle, you can't possibly believe these fabricated recordings. Ma'am, I've been doing this job for 8 years. I know the difference between coached testimony and genuine trauma responses. She gestured toward Dylan, who was still shaking near the bus. That child is exhibiting classic signs of systematic emotional abuse, and your bus driver just publicly humiliated him in front of his peers as retaliation. Rick Patterson had apparently decided that retreat was no longer an option. He stomped over from bus 47, his face red with anger. Now you listen here, lady. I don't know what kind of lies these kids have been telling, but I run a clean route. Always have. Mr. Patterson, Sarah called out, her camera still rolling, would you like to comment on the recording where you told your nephew that Marcus's father left because he was ashamed of having a defective son? Patterson's face went from red to purple. You can't use illegal recordings. Actually, we can, Sarah replied smoothly. Illinois is a one-party consent state, and minors have the right to document harassment in educational environments. But more importantly, we have documentation showing this harassment was coordinated at the administrative level. Ms. Carlisle turned to Mrs. Rodriguez. I need to see Marcus's disciplinary file. All of it. That's confidential student information. Not when there's an active investigation into institutional abuse. Ms. Carlisle's voice had gone steel sharp. And I need to speak with Emma Santos and her family immediately. Marcus pulled out his phone. Ms. Carlisle, Emma's mom is already here. She's been sitting in her car across the street for the past 10 minutes, waiting for Elena to get brave enough to come over. Sure enough, Elena Santos was walking toward us from a blue Honda, her daughter Emma trailing behind her. Emma looked terrified, but when she saw Marcus standing his ground between the adults, something shifted in her posture. Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma said, her voice small but determined, you told me last week that if I kept complaining about the bus, you'd have to transfer me to special education classes because problem children need specialized environments. Mrs. Rodriguez's face went ashen. Emma, that's not what I I recorded it, Emma interrupted, pulling out a phone that looked too advanced for a fifth grader. My brother Carlos taught me how after Marcus showed him his documentation system. Sarah practically pounced. Emma, would you be willing to share that recording? Emma looked at her mother, who nodded grimly. The audio that came from her phone was devastating. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice, unmistakably clear. Emma, sweetheart, sometimes children who have trouble adjusting need different kinds of educational support. If the bus continues to be a problem for you, we might need to consider whether mainstream classes are the right fit. Ms. Carlisle closed her notebook with a snap. Mrs. Rodriguez, you're going to need to contact your union representative. Today. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jennifer, this is Janet Kellerman. Turn on Channel 12 News. Now. I grabbed Sarah's arm and pointed to the text. She immediately called her station while I pulled up the live stream on my phone. The Channel 12 morning anchor was reading from a teleprompter with barely controlled excitement, developing story involving multiple school districts across the county. We've obtained exclusive documentation showing a coordinated effort to remove special needs and minority students from school transportation through systematic harassment and intimidation. The screen switched to a familiar face, Patricia Hendricks, the school board member, standing outside the county administration building looking haggard and defensive. I have no comment on these baseless allegations, she was saying to a crowd of reporters. The County Board Association has always prioritized student welfare and fiscal responsibility. Marcus looked up at me with something approaching awe. Mom, we did it. We actually did it. But the look on Sarah's face as she hung up her phone told me we were just getting started. By 11:47 a.m., the Riverside Elementary parking lot looked like a media circus. 7 news vans lined the street, reporters were interviewing parents who'd arrived after seeing the morning coverage, and Superintendent Walsh was barricaded inside the building refusing to come out. Marcus stood beside me on the front steps, holding a folder containing 47 pieces of evidence that had just brought down a county-wide conspiracy. Sarah Martinez was doing final sound checks before we went live in 13 minutes. Mrs. Chen, Dylan Patterson approached us, his Aunt Debbie close behind. I wanted to thank you for believing us. All of us. Debbie looked exhausted but relieved. I've been working in that district office for 8 years, watching them push families around. When Dylan started recording his uncle, I knew it was time to do the right thing. At exactly noon, Sarah looked directly into the Channel 7 camera and began, Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Martinez with an exclusive investigation into what we're calling the transportation abuse scandal, a coordinated effort across 5 county school districts to systematically harass vulnerable students off school buses to save money. She gestured toward Marcus. This is Marcus Chen, a 12-year-old boy with autism who spent 6 weeks documenting harassment on bus 47. Marcus, tell our viewers what you experienced. My son looked directly into the camera with the same steady determination he'd shown throughout this entire ordeal. Bus driver Rick Patterson called me defective and said my dad left because he was ashamed of me. When I tried to report kids throwing food at me, he told me I needed to stop acting weird if I wanted the harassment to stop. And you recorded these incidents? 47 recordings total. Plus documentation showing that Transportation Supervisor Janet Kellerman and School Board member Patricia Hendricks coordinated these harassment campaigns across 5 districts to eliminate bus routes and save $847,000 annually. Sarah played the audio of Patricia Hendricks discussing strategic family transitions and the plan to take the program statewide. The recording was devastating, made more so by Marcus's calm, methodical presentation of the evidence. The most important thing, Marcus continued, is that Dylan Patterson, Zoe Chen, Emma Santos, and 12 other kids found their voices too. We proved that when adults won't protect children, children can protect each other. My phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from parents whose kids had been targeted. Calls from lawyers offering to represent us pro bono. An email from the State Department of Education announcing an immediate investigation. At 12:23 p.m., Patricia Hendricks resigned from the school board via a statement read by her attorney. At 12:41 p.m., Superintendent Walsh was escorted from the building by security after attempting to shred documents in his office. By 1:15 p.m., Rick Patterson, Mike Kowalski, and Henderson, the 3 bus drivers, had been terminated and were facing criminal charges. But the moment that made me proudest came at 1:22 p.m., when Marcus looked up from his phone and grinned. Mom, Carlos Santos just texted me. Emma's little brother wants to learn how to document bullying too, because there are kids on his bus who need help. He paused, his eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in months, hope. I think we're going to teach him. Dylan appeared beside us, his face lighter than I'd seen it since we'd met. My mom gets out of rehab next week. She called from the facility and said she's proud of me for standing up to Uncle Rick. As we walked toward my car, Marcus shouldered his dinosaur backpack and looked back at Riverside Elementary one last time. I've never been prouder of you, I told him. Thanks, Mom, he said. But the best part is, I'm proud of me too. The quiet, brilliant boy who'd been systematically tortured for being different had just taught an entire county that sometimes the smallest voices can create the loudest revolution.